5:30, so we'll call to order this meeting for Monday, April 24th. Jordan, would you start us off with a roll call, please?
Please respond by stating present. Councilmember Ronayne.
Present.
Faubourg.
Present.
Liebelt.
Present.
Reif.
Present.
Johnson. Reinbold.
Present.
Langer. Norvstrup.
Present.
Mayor Schoeneman.
Present. Please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. First order of business will be to approve this week's printed agenda. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
David, would
Second.
you take the second on that? All right, got a motion from Councilwoman Liebelt, second from Councilman Norvstrup. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. We'll move along to our approval of minutes for the previous two meetings. First, the work session, which took place on April 13th, as well as our regular city council meeting, which took place on April 17th. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes for those two meetings?
Move to approve.
Second.
Got a motion from Councilman Reinbold and a second from Councilman Reif. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, nay. Motion does carry. I didn't see anyone. Dave, has anyone signed up to speak back there? No one has signed up to speak, so we'll move along to our consent calendar where we got 7 items of routine city business, including an Arbor Day proclamation. It looks like no one's here for that either, so I would take a motion to approve our consent calendar as printed.
Moved.
Second.
A motion, Councilman Ronayne, and a second, Councilwoman Liebelt. Anyone have anything on any of these items before we take our vote? All right, then, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Mr. Mayor, I need to abstain from the Dakota Bank item.
All right, you have to abstain in its
Otherwise, I vote
entirety at
aye
this
for the
point,
rest.
right? Is that not correct?
We're fine, you can abstain to that item.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we've got one abstention from one line item. Jordan, have you got those details?
Yes, sir.
All right, then. Motion does carry with one abstention on one item. Old business. We've got a possible second reading and final adoption of ordinance title 230402, which amends our city code to permit golf carts on the streets of the city. Passed without any objection last week. Ron, anything new on this one?
No, Mr. Mayor, no comment that I've received.
All right, then. I would take a motion for the second reading and final adoption of this ordinance.
Move final adoption.
Second.
Motion from Councilman Ronayne and a second from Councilman Reinbold. Does anyone on the council have anything on this? Go ahead, Councilwoman.
Mr. Mayor, I was just wondering if Chief McNeil could speak to this again. I've gotten a few emails with concerns about safety and have assured the constituents that if the chief
Sure.
feels it's safe, it's probably safe, so it'd be good to hear just a little bit more from him.
Sounds great. Dave, thanks for joining us here tonight. Make sure your little green light is on. The question at hand is, there's been some concerns from a couple of residents in regards to the safety of golf carts operating on city streets.
Certainly. I think the way the ordinance is designed will allow the safety that we all expect. When we're, with the ordinance only allowing people that have driver's license, people that have taken a driver's test, proven their abilities in a driver's exam status, they're vetted, right? They have a driver's license. The insurance, in my mind, makes a big responsibility piece to this ordinance. The way the ordinance is set up to make sure that slow-moving vehicle emblem is on the cart, and then the flag, in my mind, has a big impact on that. And also where we're regulating it, roads that only have 25-mile-an-hour speed limits, we're not allowing these to drive on 6th Avenue, the US highways. I think that will impact safety as well. And just from talking to another chief in Madison, knowing their experience and how that made a difference, I'm comfortable with moving forward with this ordinance. Are there any specific questions that I could field related that you might have
The
acquired?
the only specific question was about lights, but they're not allowed to drive at night. And
Right, yeah. Two different residents reached out with questions about lights in particular, but I guess if we're comfortable that beings that they won't be allowed after dusk, that should probably shore
Yes.
up the need for those. Go
Well,
ahead, Justin.
Will that pertain to the 30 minutes before sunset and 30 minutes after?
Ron, if you could return to the
Sunrise.
ordinance, how did we write that specifically? I believe they have, as sunsets, I'll let you
Yeah,
read
we
that.
did clean that up, but it said that the golf carts shall only be operated during daytime between 1/2 hour after sunrise
So the same.
to 1/2 hour before sunset. So those are well-lighted times, and that's the concern as addressed.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Chief. I appreciate your insight onto
you.
this. Anyone else from the council have anything before we take our vote, our second vote on this matter? All right. Jordan, would you give us a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Ronayne,
Aye.
Foberg,
Aye.
Liebelt,
Aye.
Rife,
Aye.
Reinbold,
Aye.
Langer,
Aye.
Norvstrup.
Aye.
Mayor Shoneman.
Aye, motion
Mr. Mayor, may I address the council?
does carry. Go ahead.
Thank you. I would let the council know that, there was attached as part of this was just a proposed set of fees for a temporary and then a 3-year permit. We have another ordinance that'll be considered, and it's very possible that we will be coming forth with a new, an adjusted city fee schedule to adopt the fees for this and the other ordinance. But I did want the public to know that this ordinance will be published and then becomes effective 20 days after. So we're looking roughly around May 20th, that area, for when this ordinance would become effective. So we will need to have, we might just have guidance from the council at that time because we won't have an approved fee schedule with these adjustments. But we'd probably be looking for something for issuance of permits along the lines that we have in the proposed fee. So,
Thank you, Ron. Appreciate that information. We'll get that taken care of lickety-split. With that, we'll move along to our new business where we've got a public hearing and possible first reading of ordinance 230401, which rezones properties described as lots 1 and 2 at Steele's Quarter, first edition of City of Aberdeen in Brown County, 19 South, 115 from I-2 district to a C2 district. And Brett, what can you tell us about that?
The petitioner is requesting this rezoning in order to bring the property into a district that will permit commercial uses. The petition rezone was submitted in conjunction with a preliminary and final plat, which was approved previously in the meeting. And it was approved by the Planning Commission. Both were approved by the Planning Commission on the 18th of this month. And City Council approved the annexation of this property on March 27th. Staff and Planning Commission recommend approval of this rezoning.
Move to approve.
Got a motion from Councilman Rife and a second from Councilman Norvstrup. Anything from the council? All right, Jordan, would you give us a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Norvstrup,
Aye.
Langer,
Aye.
Reinbold,
Aye.
Rife,
Aye.
Liebelt,
Aye.
Foberg,
Aye.
Ronayne,
Aye.
Mayor Shoneman.
Aye, motion does carry. Next, we've got a possible first reading of an ordinance titled 230403, which amends the Aberdeen City Code regarding certain vacant buildings as public nuisances, as well as establishing a registration program. Brett, will you kick that off for us?
Well, I guess this is the ordinance that we discussed in the work session here a couple weeks ago. We've been working with Ron on it. We've had some things that, we listened to the comments that were made in the work session, made a few changes to what was initially submitted. What this will do, it will help our code enforcement department help take care of some of these buildings that are classified as nuisances that are currently vacant, and we know they're vacant. And we're having trouble with getting property owners to do something with them, whether to maintain them, move along to somebody else who will maintain them. And it's just, I think it's a good move for the city, and it'll help, clean up some of these neighborhoods, and I think will make some of the neighbors pretty happy.
could I supplement that?
Go ahead. Ron?
Mr. Mayor, I wanted to let the council know that following our work session, we did weave throughout the revised document more information about this as being a public nuisance. And that allows us the ability then to use our standard nuisance abatement type powers to deal with these. Also wanted to make it clear so that the council is aware and the public is aware that we're not talking about every vacant building. We're talking about those vacant buildings that are essentially a nuisance. They're unoccupied, all of them are unoccupied, but they're unsecured, or they're dilapidated, or in some condition, or they have people in there that they shouldn't, squatter situation, but all of these arise to the level of a nuisance. And so we have proposed for the council the language that you see before you, but if it would assist in the public perception of what this is, we might want to have an amendment that places before the phrase vacant building, nuisance vacant building. So that it's very clear that we're just talking about those properties that have fallen into the definition of a nuisance that you'll see at 26-135, that language there for laying out what is a nuisance type vacant building. So I would ask that if the council is concerned about the public's perception and getting some confusion, that it might want to consider an amendment that would put the word nuisance essentially before the phrase vacant buildings.
Sorry, and where were you suggesting that, Ron?
Well,
Slow.
I wish I could show you on the screen, but
Is it 26-137?
it's all throughout the document. There is the phrase vacant buildings. There's only one place that I thought that it didn't necessarily help to add the word nuisance in front of it. That was more just talking about vacant building in a general way. But I would, if the council could, at some point, if you were interested in that, you could just make a motion to amend to add that word before all of the phrases.
And would that be a substantive amendment? Is there a reason we couldn't do it next time?
I think it'd be better to do it now on first reading, because I do think it might be a substantive amendment.
Okay. I'm going to move the proposed ordinance as proposed.
With that amendment, you're saying?
Well, I don't think I can. I think we have to move this first, and then I think we
Oh.
move to amend.
This,
Okay, we've got a motion from Councilman Ronayne and a second from Councilman Norvstrup for the ordinance itself. And then, I guess,
Then I would move the amendment, adding the word nuisance before the word vacant throughout the ordinance?
The phrase vacant buildings
Sorry,
throughout the ordinance.
yes, before the phrase vacant building throughout the ordinance.
all right, so I've got a motion from a Councilman Ronayne and a second from Councilman Norvstrup to make an amendment to this ordinance, which would add the term nuisance in front of any of the phrase vacant buildings as they appear throughout the ordinance. Does anyone have anything as far as that amendment is concerned? Go ahead, Councilwoman.
Mr. Mayor, is the definition of nuisance in here? Or is that like a legal term of art that one would know?
I don't think the definition of nuisance is within this section of the ordinance. It's within the main part of the ordinance that this is in. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
We do have a definition of it. It just isn't in this one that we're proposing tonight.
Is it something that could be accessed for the purpose of review real quick?
Is there like a threshold to nuisance?
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead, Councilwoman.
I have the same question as well. So if there is a way for us to know what that definition technically is, because if we were both thinking that, I'm guessing a lot of us are thinking that. So we're just going to make sure it's as clear as possible.
Sounds good. I think our city attorney is looking
So
at it.
I have it on my screen, but I don't think it's going to do you any good unless I'm able, here we go. I don't know that Tiffany will be able to see it. Do you see that?
Yes.
So there's the nuisance definition right there.
Where?
26-118A talks about generally the nuisance, and then B talks about a public nuisance. And that's the standard definition for a public nuisance within the existing ordinance. So this kind of general language that we're seeing here. And if we could go, I'll put you back here, but here's the language that we have in the proposed nuisance vacant buildings ordinance, where we are saying that it's a public nuisance because it is unoccupied and unsecured, unoccupied and secured, those phrases right here. Which you would ordinarily see as problem properties if they're unoccupied and you have either dilapidated conditions or they're condemned, or there are people in there illegally occupied.
So the purpose of the amendment is to indicate to all people reading and adhering to this ordinance that we're not talking about just a structure that just doesn't have any current tenants in it at that point.
Correct. Yep, and that's right. It's just not an empty building. It's one that has issues that create the nuisance aspect of it. But let me bring up a red line document with the change that would be your amendment.
There we go.
So I just added the word nuisance vacant buildings in various places throughout here.
So is there a legal ramification that comes from having this word in practice, or is this simply just for appearance's sake?
Well, it helps define what it is that we're talking about, which is a nuisance type property, and that would be consistent with this definition that we're seeing here.
So in the broader definition of nuisance that you clicked out to, it says tends or trends down or tends to lower the value of adjacent real estate. That seems pretty objective, I guess, in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, these are, the definition of a public nuisance is naturally a fairly general type thing. The statute the ordinance goes on later to identify more specific types of things that we're all familiar with, but
we aren't creating a trap that's gonna be larger because of that word. There's a pink house near the water park. Have you seen this?
No,
Near the what?
There's a pink
Pink
colored,
house.
fuchsia perhaps, colored house by the water park. Very bright, bold, new paint on it. Looks nice. It's a nice looking home. It just has a obscene color. Would someone maybe construe that as lowering the value because of unsightliness of an adjacent property? I mean, that would be the only real concern you'd have is, are you casting a larger net than necessary by including that word? If we're not, then we're not.
We're not changing. We are creating a new category of nuisance with these vacant buildings. With the unoccupied language and then what follows, And again, not every unoccupied building is going to be a nuisance. That's why it's important. You leave your home for a few months to go down south, your house isn't gonna be a nuisance vacant building. If you have a property where squatters have now come in, or it's fallen apart, that falls under the new ordinance and would be required to fall under the registration.
All right, does anyone else have any questions as it relates to the amendment specifically?
Mr. Mayor, one
Go
more
ahead.
question for Ron. In this section of the ordinances where it defines nuisance more broadly, is now vacant building the only one that has the adjective nuisance, or are all the other nuisances already defined as nuisances? Do you know what I'm saying? So like, did we just add another word for no reason, and then the rest of the entire section of the ordinance doesn't use that word as a modifier?
Well, I think the entire ordinance is classified, is titled nuisance.
So it seems redundant to me.
Well, and again, I'm not saying it isn't. I'm saying it's literally, it doesn't change the substance of this particular ordinance, and it allows more clarification to the public as to what kind of buildings we're talking about.
I think if we were to deal with a property owner with a piece, or somebody would, say a neighbor were to call in, they're complaining about their neighbor's house. And if we can say under the terms of nuisance, yes, it falls under this, then we can do something about your neighbor's house, but it has to fall under that nuisance category. You get neighbors who get upset at their neighbors over the drop of a hat. We're not trying to, we don't want to get in the middle of that. And I think with having the nuisance definition there, or the in the beginning of vacant buildings, it would help to alleviate some of that, where we're getting caught in the middle between property owners, and also help us to explain to a homeowner, your building is a nuisance vacant property because of this, and we can go through this plus other items within the ordinance that classify things as a nuisance.
So you don't see it as a problem?
I don't see, I think it's gonna be a help to us, to be honest, especially if we're trying to explain it to the public.
Sounds good. Anyone else as it relates to the modification to the ordinance, not the ordinance itself? Jordan, would you give us a roll call vote on that amendment, please?
Councilmember Ronayne,
Aye.
Foberg,
Aye.
Liebelt,
Aye.
Reif,
Aye.
Reinbold,
Aye.
Langer,
Aye.
Norvstrup,
Aye.
Mayor Shonneman.
Aye, motion does carry. And Ron, we had talked that, in terms of fee schedules and that kind of a thing, that'll be something to be set down the road once this thing is passed, if it's passed, the particular fees. But does anyone from the council have anything else as it relates to the remainder of the ordinance before we take our vote, our first reading vote on that one? All right, Jordan?
Councilmember Norvstrup,
Aye.
Langer,
Aye.
Reinbold,
Aye.
Reif,
Aye.
Liebelt,
Aye.
Foberg,
Aye.
Ronayne,
Aye.
Mayor Shonneman.
Aye, motion does carry. Next, we've got a request by McQuillan Properties for permission to paint a mural on the east side of the building located at 423 South Main Street. Brett?
The petitioner is requesting to attach a mural to the east side of their building. The petitioner's requested this before on another wall of the building, and it looks very nice. This has gone through the planning commission, and they recommend approval.
Move to approve.
Second.
Second.
Too late, Tiffany. That lag. We've got a motion from Councilman Ronayne and a second from Councilman Reinbold. And so this will be a painted piece.
It will be painted directly onto the building, yes.
Great, looks great to me. Does anyone have anything before we take our vote on this one? This one can just be a voice vote, right?
Correct.
All right, go ahead. Did you have something?
I was just telling Char, he's a cute pheasant.
Oh, yeah.
Contemporary cute.
Yeah.
Patchwork, yeah. All right, how's your printed piece that's holding up on the south side of the building?
It might be a tiny bit faded, but I think it still looks really good.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are using it for pictures, which is nice. All right, then. We've got our motion, we've got our second. If there's nothing else from the council, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion does carry. Thanks for joining us here tonight, Troy. Nice work. When do you expect to get it done?
Hopefully June.
Okay, great. Next, we've got our review and approval of claims and payroll. We've got the bills list for this week, April 24th. We've got a pay period of April 9th through the 22nd, as well as the associated costs with employing people. Although I see that we've truncated that description a little bit. Used to say all the taxes and all those type of things right in the document. Save us a little time moving forward. I would take a motion to pay our bills.
Move to approve.
Second.
Got a motion from Councilman Reif and a second from Councilwoman Liebelt. Jordan, would you give us a roll call vote on the bills, please?
Councilmember Ronayne,
Aye.
Foberg,
Aye.
Liebelt,
Aye.
Reif,
Aye.
Reinbold,
Aye.
Langer,
Aye.
Norvstrup,
Aye.
Mayor Shonneman.
Aye, motion does carry. Next, we've got our city manager's report with City Manager Joe God. Joe, what have you got for us?
I just wanted to share some information that we've seen and then maybe give a little more detail. But you've noticed, and actually the mayor made mention of it earlier, that this week with your garbage, if you have some leftover tree branches hanging around in your yard, and I promise it's gonna grow and we'll need to mow soon, so you'll need those out of the way. You can put them with your garbage pickup and they'll pick those up as long as they're no more than 6 inches in diameter. But what I really wanted to share is more so than that, but just how this happens in some of these things, because and we've been talking about nuisances a little bit, and folks call in all the time and report something as a nuisance. Whether or not it is something that has to be reviewed by staff. And this is one of those things where our codes enforcement staff was driving around looking at complaints and noticed an awful lot of yards had limbs in them. in particular, mostly probably left over from the ice storm in November, and ever since then it snowed. Now finally the snow's melted so you can see them. And rather than look at this as a nuisance, the staff started looking at how could we work to resolve this. And so it was brought to me kind of as a permission, can we reach out to other departments and start looking at some solutions? And that's what happened. Several folks got involved in this, and we determined the best, most effective and efficient way to do this was do it through the trash service, the garbage service on the normal routes, and then also we put it out on our emails, our notification, the Facebook pages in particular, police and fire, and really helped stretch that out. So it was a team effort to make sure we don't have to do as many nuisance complaints. And I think it was just a good example of our staff works to provide services to our residents, and I just thought that was good news. That's all I have.
Thanks, Joe. That was a much appreciated effort. I think those grant is out. Go ahead, Justin.
I do have one question. With the weather getting nicer, how about street sweeping? Is there a date set for that to start? A lot of gravel on the sides of the roads.
Sue, what have you got?
I believe what they're waiting for is for temperatures to stay up at night a little bit, so they can not have to worry about freezing temps. But yeah, I know that they've been working on the sweepers and getting them ready to go, so I would imagine it's gonna be any time.
Thank you.
Glad we don't have snow in all those gutters.
Yep.
All right, I would take a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Second.
Motion, Councilman Northrup, second Reinbold. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, nay.
Aye.
Motion does carry.